Welcome on into onesoccer.ca, everybody. And look at us. We all coordinated for St. Paddy's Day. We all have our green. You got Gareth. That's kind of like a Canadian St. Paddy's with the plaid. I appreciate that, Gareth. That's a good little combination you've got going on there. You've got more of that kind of hunter green going, Ollie, and I have the mint green. So we're representing the different shades of green here.
3 shades of green.
St. Paddy's Day. I love
Sounds
it.
hot.
3 shades of green coming out.
Better than gray.
Okay. Now this is derailed very quickly. Let me bring it back on track. Let's talk CF Montreal. They've been eliminated from CONCACAF Champions League. 1-1 draw last night against Cruz Azul, but they lose 2-1 on aggregate. Gareth, your biggest takeaway from Montreal's 2 Champion League ties?
Man, Cruz Azul's not that good of a team. I think that Montreal is going to be kicking themselves. Like, that tie was there for the taking. It's funny, the fact that the away goals rule still exists in CONCACAF Champions League. We've just been watching UEFA Champions League where, you know, if Cruz Azul doesn't score that second goal, the away goal doesn't count. It's still 2-2. They're very much in the game. They might have to come out and play a different way, but that away goals rule set up very nicely for Cruz Azul. I think the same questions about Montreal persist that were asked about them when they start the season. Is there enough goals outside of Kyoto in this side? That's what it came down to. Kamara's 37. I think he's an okay player. I think he's good, but he's good in spurts, right? And the team, because they're missing quite a few players through injury, they just didn't have enough to really get out there and challenge Cruz Azul in the attacking third once they kind of parked the bus and started to play with 3 at the back. So I think it's a tough one for Montreal. Although they were outplayed for long stretches in the first leg, I don't think that was the case whatsoever in the second leg. And I think that they're going to be kicking themselves that they're not moving on in this competition.
Yeah, I thought we saw the 2 kind of different sides of Montreal in this competition, and we'll see which one wins out over the MLS regular season against Santos Laguna in that second leg. And I thought in the second half last night against Cruz Azul, we saw an excellent team. A team that can take the game to opponents, can play with real quality, dominate the ball, put the opponent on the back foot, and make them spend a lot of time in their own half. And then in other games, we saw them kind of overwhelmed, obviously, Azteca. But even in the first half last night, I just thought it was too many loose decisions in their own half, lacking tempo, lacking intent, content to kind of tap the ball around at the back rather than play with any real purpose. And they too easily slip into that, I think. And we've seen it multiple times this season, even just in 10, 15-minute spells in games where it all gets a bit loose and a bit casual and they get punished. And that side of their game, they have to eliminate. So it's a shame it took 45 minutes, but I thought once they, came out after halftime, brought Kamara on and had another player up front with Kyoto, there was so much more intent to the team, so much more purpose. And that is the model, I think, going forwards. If you can recreate that on a semi-regular basis, I think you'll have a decent team.
Well, let's keep talking about MLS and in particular Champions League, because New England's going to rear its ugly head in our favorite segment of likely or unlikely. And don't you dare go hopefully likely, Ollie, or maybe you should just for nostalgia's sake here. But let me begin with you. Likely or unlikely, Ollie, that CF Montreal's early Champions League exit will actually help them in the long run?
Likely, I guess, because, the next few weeks are going to be a bit more straightforward for them now without a Champions League semi-final to play. But I don't think it makes that big a difference now. 2 more games early on in the season potentially to fit into the schedule. Yes, it does make playing at the weekend in MLS difficult, but I think you still want to be in the Champions League. You want to be competing for that trophy. So a bit easier, but I don't think it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I'm going to say unlikely because I don't think it makes a difference whatsoever. The trouble early in the season, if you're Montreal, you're not playing outdoors in your normal stadium. When you're playing home games, you're inside the Big O, which I don't think plays into anyone's favor. Some players have picked up injuries playing on that surface. That's less than ideal. And then again, because of the schedule and the climate, you're playing the next couple of weeks away from home as well. So it's been a really difficult start to the season schedule-wise for CF Montreal. So whether they're in this competition or not, I don't think it matters much.
All right, quickly, in case you didn't know what was going on with New England, they were actually entering their second leg up 3-0. They had an incredible showing at Foxborough. They allowed Pumas to score 3 goals, and this one had to go to penalty kicks. New England out. Ollie, likely or unlikely that New England's loss is the most embarrassing collapse in MLS's CONCACAF Champions League history?
Mate, I'll say likely, because I think in terms of a collapse, being 3-0 up, I can't think of one. I had a quick look back this morning that really compares in terms of that kind of advantage. But we know this isn't new, right? Like an MLS team doing very well in this case in the first leg, but even just in the past, there's been plenty of occasions where they've done fine in the home leg, and then they go to Mexico and the whole thing blows up. So the question for me at this point is, how much longer do we want to keep doing this, and what's it going to take for MLS to start making some real changes to, that can help their teams compete in this competition and compete against Mexican sides. We know how important that is to MLS as a league, how much they value the idea of competition against Mexico. So when, what's going to be the point where they start making real changes that can allow them to do that? And the big one for me that stands out, and we've talked about it multiple times, it's time to rip up the CBA and these roster rules, because they're consistently holding these teams back when the Mexican teams, I don't think, are spending significantly more than the MLS teams now, but they're spending it across the whole roster, right? Rather than on 3 players. And so you see New England last night, 2 starting centre backs injured, starting goalkeeper injured. The replacements who come in just aren't good enough, and what do you expect of guys who are earning like $80,000 a year going down to play away in Mexico? That has to change. I think we've said this many times that we're past the point where we need to keep layering on these roster rules now and make it as complicated as it is. Bring in a hard salary cap of 20 million, 25 million, whatever you want to make it, and allow these MLS teams to build their rosters the way they want to build them, that they think gives them the best chance of competing in competitions like this.
What a load of bull that was that you just spewed out there. A CBA didn't make the players just absolutely choke on the field over 90 minutes. The CBA didn't lose in a penalty shootout.
Who were the players, Wills?
Like Hill, Bo, Buxa, Altidore, like all of these players were available and playing. This was a massive choke job. This was a massive choke job by a team that should have gone on to win this. This was a Supporter Shield winning team from last year. Sometimes it's okay to point the finger at the players, what actually happens on the field on that night. They had a bad night. They lost 3-0. They lost in penalties. Like, this happens in the game of football. Like, in UEFA, do we look at Juventus as being like an absolute joke of a club side because they lost 3-0 at home to Villarreal? Like, come on, this is football. These things happen. No, this isn't the most embarrassing loss. I'm not exactly sure what is. It's just football. And the blame falls on the players.
It happens every year.
Unable to execute, conceding late. It's just not good enough. That team needs to be able to go down there and score a goal as well. Look, it's not the CBA this time around. These Liga MX sides are bleeding. They're becoming worse and worse every year. MLS sides are becoming better and better. Look, I can quibble with the structure as well. I don't like TAM and GAM and a lot of these gimmicks, but still, that's not the reason why New England lost this game.
Sorry, Andy, why do you think the players choke though? It's because they've got guys in central defense who just aren't good enough to be there. If you build a squad with proper players, because you have the ability to bring in those players in that depth that the Mexican teams have, this doesn't happen.
You just don't lose just because of a center back problem. 3-0.
Two, and the goalkeeper.
And this is definitely a bigger conversation to have, because, as we know, a lot of fans as well want to get rid of the 3 DP rule. They obviously want, that whole, you're allowed X amount of international spots. They want a bigger cap. We know that. That's a bigger conversation. It doesn't necessarily apply to last night's game. I don't know, but I will say this, Bruce Arena, there's a great viral moment there when a penalty kick is missed.
Yeah.
Don't read lips, kids. But either way, it's a great viral moment. Go check it out.
Andy, can I just mention this really, really quickly?
Sure.
Look where New England Revolution play their home games. It's in a stadium that's like 3/4 empty every time they play. There's no atmosphere. There's no environment. They go to a tough place early in the season where there actually is atmosphere. There is an environment. It is a footballing environment. They go on and lose that game. I don't think that that's a coincidence there. And there's a reason why New England have lost some big games in recent years as well. Their home stadium is a liability for this team, both short and long term.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this then, Gareth, likely or unlikely that MLS is heading for another year of CONCACAF Champions League disappointment?
Unlikely. We'll see what Seattle does tonight. I mean, they have a 3-goal advantage. And if they go on, it's going to be them or New York City FC in the Champions League final. And I'd probably side with one of those teams over anything that I've seen from Cruz Azul or Pumas. Like I just don't think that these are the great Liga MX sides that we've seen in the past. So I think there's a real opportunity. I think the Sounders are a really good team. And New York City, I know it's been a little bit of a slow start to the season for them, but by the time the final comes around, I think that they can be in good form as well.
I'll say unlikely because I don't think these Liga MX teams are vintage Mexican teams by any stretch of the imagination, which makes it even more damning that New England couldn't get the job done last night, and the fact that we're still facing a prospect of a Liga MX team once again winning this competition. But I think again, everything has to go right for these MLS teams if they're going to win, right? They need to be fully healthy in time for the final, be able to get their strongest team on the fields. They need to be informed that there's too much consistently that has to go right for an MLS team to have a chance of winning. Maybe that will happen this year because I think New York and Seattle are really good teams. But maybe it won't again. And we'll be wondering how on earth an MLS team hasn't won this competition.
Quick timeout from likely or unlikely as we're on this topic of MLS versus Liga MX. And we know that the last couple of years, there's been the Leagues Cup, and it's typically been the top teams in Liga MX and like the top 8 teams in MLS that have been competing. But we know in 2023, the tournament is going to change. In 2023, next summer, both leagues will shut down for 1 month, a la World Cup style, and every single club, MLS, Liga MX, will participate in this tournament. And this is a big deal for Commissioner Don Garber because, as we know, the new TV rights deal's up this year. Before, when you got MLS rights, you also got the national team rights. That's not the case this time around because they have split. But what he's doing is he's saying, hey, we want to increase our TV rights deal here because we're going to dangle this carrot of this Leagues Cup tournament. This is going to be a big thing for us. But I wonder, Ollie, how much rides on the fact that MLS teams need to be competitive in that tournament, or it risks becoming a joke.
Yeah, they do need to be competitive in that tournament. And, there's a lot to get into on that front in terms of, TV deals and the ratings that MLS games are currently doing on TV. And obviously this is one solution they need to find, or they're trying to find, to improve those ratings. I just keep coming back to, I think the way MLS has structured this league with, the franchise model and the salary cap and all of the rules and so on and so forth, I think has served a purpose, right? We all understand that there was no assurances that soccer could succeed in North America, and you have to have this solid structure to get you off the ground. I think we're beyond that now. I think we're getting to a place where this league is secure and this league has a potentially great future in front of it, and it needs to evolve. And that for me, you can create a Leagues Cup and all of these different things in a bid to make more people watch your product and make it more popular. I think we've got to start looking at, how the rest of the world structures their leagues, why people watch soccer all around the world, and start to emulate some of those things a little bit more in terms of, the competitive organization of this competition. For me, things like this, I don't hate the idea of the Leagues Cup. I'm going to look forward to seeing more MLS teams and Liga MX teams in action, but it's not getting at the heart of the problem that MLS is facing if it really wants to grow the product into kind of that national relevance that obviously they crave.
Mm-hmm. You have any thoughts on that, Gareth?
I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to bring in the Mexican football fans in America closer to the MLS game. That's what you're following the money. And I don't even say that in a bad way. Like every time that the US plays Mexico, the national teams play in men's football, incredible ratings, tons of eyeballs, tons of attention. They want to capture some of that magic and sprinkle it all over their league. And I understand that. My concern is how much you're going to get the casual MLS fan to buy into this. You're asking people to watch another league. I always find that when I'm explaining European football or international football, just the overall structure to people that are kind of interested in the game, but not really, they get confused. Mm-hmm. Like with the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Milk Cup, any cup, it's what am I watching here? Right. You need to be able to spell it out to people. And that's these names change all the time, and it's sponsored by it's very difficult to follow if you're not a hardcore supporter. And that's what I worry about, not getting traction of people that will support their team no matter what, because there's going to be great interest in this, but it's just for the casuals that it's a big ask for me.
Yeah, no,
I don't think anyone needs to worry about the Milk Cup, by the way.
The
25
Worthington
years.
Cup, the Carling Cup, what would you like to call it?
Oh
The
my
Carabao Cup?
Yes. Let's just to come up with another. But that you're so right. Like the casual North American sports fan knows a league and playoffs. League, playoffs. And then when you start introducing tournaments, they're like, but what? So wait, if they win this, do they win the? No. But you're right. Either way, we wish it much success. I'm very curious to see what it'll look like next year when both leagues will shut down for a month. Let's get back to a little likely or unlikely here, Gareth. Given Toronto FC's lack of depth at the back, sending Kamar Lawrence to Minnesota is a strange move. Likely or unlikely?
Unlikely. It was a strange move when he was acquired and brought to this team. My understanding was the general manager at the time really kind of didn't fancy the player, and neither did the coach. And I'm not sure why they felt obliged to bring the player in at the time. And my understanding is he came in at a number which was astronomical for what the player's value is. I don't think that Kamar Lawrence is a bad player or a bad guy, but he was a bad fit with Toronto FC from the hop. So when you already have limited dollars to spend, it's puzzling to me last season why they would have looked to him to kind of play a position that they kind of maybe perhaps needed, but at a price that was far too high. So look, we've seen a complete cutoff of players that are in the plans for Toronto FC and players who simply aren't. And it takes time to shed that salary and rid of some of these players that don't fit the big term or the big picture long-term approach here. And Kamar Lawrence most certainly didn't fit what Bob Bradley wants to do here.
Yeah, unlikely. I think they wanted to do two things this offseason. They wanted to clear cap space, or they had to clear cap space, and they wanted to offload guys that they didn't feel were really bought into the future at TFC. And I think from all indications you get from within the club, Kamar Lawrence kind of ticked both of those boxes. So it's not really a surprise that he's on his way out.
That is an interesting back line for Toronto FC. That is for sure. Let me ask you this, Ollie. This is, as we like to say, a spicy meatball. Michael Bradley will retire after this season. Likely or unlikely, Ollie?
I'm going to say unlikely, because you always get the impression with Michael Bradley that he'll play for as long as he possibly can. He just loves playing football that much. But look, it's early, right? But if this is Michael Bradley in 2022, maybe it's not impossible either, because I don't think anyone can say he's blown their socks off in the first 3 games of the season. I think we're at the point now where playing as that centre back in a 3 almost looks like it's going to suit him more, because it asks of less of him as a ball winner, right? And in terms of when he plays that number 6 position, he has to be aggressive. He has to cover a lot of grass, step and close down. And I just don't see Michael Bradley really being able to do that anymore. So maybe there's a solution there in the middle of a back 3. But his form has to improve, I think, if you can really say that, he has to be on the team sheet for TFC week in, week out.
Unlikely. I'd hate to speak for Michael Bradley. I have no idea what he's thinking right now, but he's the ultimate competitor, right? Like, I feel like until his body completely breaks down, he's going to go out there and give it 100% and try to continue to play as long as he can. Like, he's fully committed. Look, he's still the first player in the gym every day. The first player to the training ground. Like, I think that the passion's still there, and he cares about the city of Toronto, not just the club, but the city deeply. And I think that he wants to set things right before he steps away. And I think it's going to take some time. And I think that the player has enough, street cred. He has a resume, and he's a commitment to put some more faith in maybe what some people are right now, putting some faith in him that he can still get the job done with a better team around him. I think that Ollie's right to a certain degree, that he does need some more legs in positions around him. Like, sometimes he can be his worst enemy, trying to do a little bit too much. But I don't think that his heart or his head is in the wrong place. So I can't see him hanging them up at the end of this season unless his body tells him he has to stop.
Yeah. I'll just say this, and this is nothing with Michael Bradley. This is more of an overarching opinion. There is nothing more sad than watching an athlete who doesn't realize father time has come. And they just try so hard. I mean, I think in some ways we're even seeing that a little bit with LeBron James. It's a little bit heartbreaking. I hope we don't see that with Tom Brady now that he's come back out of retirement. But I will say that sometimes athletes, to your point, they love the game so much, they love the city, they love the team so much. But when Father Time comes for you, there is nothing.
Wouldn't you like to see Tom Brady just stink for a year?
Yes. Yes.
Just one year.
Having someone who loves to bet against Tom Brady. Yes, absolutely.
And Ollie with the dagger just right out of left field.
I mean, he's had a lot of good years, all right? Like,
yeah, he's a lot of good years, a lot of rings. All right, let's wrap this up with Gareth. If things don't improve quickly for Vancouver Whitecaps, Artini's job can be in jeopardy before the month of May. Likely or unlikely?
Before the month of May. I'll say unlikely, but I feel like a broken record here. I keep on saying it. I believe he only signed a 2-year contract. That tells me that there's not a complete buy-in. There's like an out clause here. When for a club that, might want to watch their dollars a little bit, having to pay out a coach that signed to a long-term contract, well, you have to pay to bring in another coach. It's less than ideal. I think they're going to give him every chance possible. Seems like a great guy. Like, the city loves the guy, but I'm sure the Whitecaps fans just don't love the way that the team's playing right now. And that has to be the overarching thought process here for Axel Schuster. Like, how is he going to get the best out of this team? Is it with this head coach or with someone else? I think that question is still there to be answered, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
Before May, I think is unlikely, but May is a big month. First 2 rounds of the Canadian Championship. If they don't navigate those two and have themselves, at least in the playoff picture at the same time, then, there's going to be a lot of heat on Vanni Sartini. So that's a big month, I think, and one that'll be pretty decisive as to whether he can be the guy, at least for this season in Vancouver.
All right, gentlemen, we are 1 week away from the start of the final window of World Cup qualifiers. We know Canada in a very good position in that first game against Costa Rica to officially clinch and book their tickets to Qatar. We know, Ollie, that you will be there. You will be in Costa Rica. You'll be joining them in camp. Then you'll be there. Terry Dunfield back in the booth with Gareth. I'll be in studio with Christian Jack, and Patrice Bernier will be joining me. So really excited for everything that's going to go on next week in that game against Costa Rica right here on One Soccer. But Gareth, you have an update on Alphonso Davies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question mark when the Canada squad will be unveiled. My understanding is that don't expect it to be unveiled before the games this weekend are over. So John Herdman and his staff have a clear picture of the fitness of players and how players come out. And obviously, we're throwing curveballs on a regular basis. When it comes to Alphonso Davies, it's no secret that Canada continues to push and try to come up with a way to ensure that Alphonso Davies can make the trip over and be part of the Canadian squad for these World Cup qualifying games. For obvious reasons, you need to be careful. And for obvious reasons, Bayern Munich will probably, have been a little bit reluctant in order to grant permission to allow Davies to come. Obviously, $100 million player, a guy that hasn't played, this calendar year. It's a long time off for a young player, and heart issues, obviously, that we've seen with Eriksson and Aguero. It's the anniversary of Fabrice Muamba's cardiac arrest on the field. Like, it's not something that you want to mess around with. With that being said, my understanding is that the Canadian staff and John Herdman have a great relationship with Bayern Munich. They've actually kind of opened up the possibility of even potentially Bayern Munich sending over a trainer with Alphonso Davies and plotting out a return to play plan for Alphonso Davies, where he doesn't come into the Canada camp and he just plays unlimited minutes, but there's a plan in terms of his training sessions, plan in terms of maybe potentially having limited minutes on the field to kind of ease him back into action, which could actually be beneficial for Bayern Munich with the player returning to action after the international window. So the conversations are taking place. Everything's amicable. All parties are operating in the best interest of the player, obviously. Alphonso wants to be with Canada. It's just a matter of figuring out the safest possible solution to make that happen. As of early on Thursday, it certainly hasn't been ruled out as of yet. I would still consider it unlikely that he's part of the Canada squad, but that door hasn't been absolutely slammed shut just yet.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I think people would want Alphonso Davies in the lineup for Canada, but I can also understand a club saying he hasn't even played for us yet, right? Like that first game back, I can understand Bayern saying, I'd want it to be with us. But wouldn't it be nice, to your point, Gareth, if they at least send him over to celebrate with his team? when that clinch happens. That would be nice for him to be there instead of as highly entertaining as those viral videos were of him yelling and, his dad beside him.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if they could at least fly him over to be with his team.
I mean, travel's a consideration as well. I just like the mindset of Herdman and his staff, the way that they work with club teams, because oftentimes the national team's on one island and the club side is on a completely different island, right? And these are two sides that are working together, trying to come up and figure out the best solution in the interest of the player. You don't see national teams inviting team trainers from another club to come over with the player to make sure that he's okay, right? He's being taken care of, being able to report back to the club and be able to work together with the national federation in order to find the best way forward. If that's actually what's happening, in my understanding then I think that this is a really good way for Canada Soccer to continue to operate with their star players moving forward.
Ollie, do you think Herdman should go all out and try to finish first in CONCACAF, or should he do some experimenting in preparation for Qatar?
I think he should go all out to try and finish first and to try and retain that unbeaten record and to try and get crucial FIFA points, right? Which could put Canada potentially in pot 3 for the World Cup draw. What I would also say is that I think there's still, I don't think Canada's first 11 and the first 11 is realistically not going to change that much between now and the World Cup, in my opinion. That first 11 is not a finished product. Like, there's still experimentation and different things you can do with your key players, right? And things to find out about your key players in competitive matches before you get to the World Cup. So for me, in these World Cup qualifiers, there's going to be time in the summer to potentially see some new faces. For now, you want your best players on the field. You want them continuing to build the relationships between them. Maybe you try one or two different things tactically, but with those key players, and those guys have got to be your focus going into these 3 games.
There is no messing around. I will tell you that definitively, Andy. There, like in Canada's mindset here, there's no room for error. There might be a new face in the Canadian men's national team. I expect a new midfielder to come in with Samuel Piette not being able to play, but this isn't time to mess around here. The goals are clear. Go on and qualify first. In the second game against Jamaica, go on and win the CONCACAF qualifying group. Third game, go on and win it and somehow make your way into pot 3. Like, these are very achievable goals. So I have a feeling that John Herdman's going to roll with the players that he got him there. And all of these calls, like, it's unbelievable. Like, I'm not on Twitter, or as I like to call it, complain very often anymore. But when I am, there's like, what about this player coming? Any new players? What's wrong with the team that we're seeing now?
People like new things.
Points. Why are you going out to throw things in the blender or switch things up? Trust the players that you've come this far with, reward them for the work and the commitment that they've shown. So I don't expect very many changes at all and very, very little experimentation.
Yeah, I think their goal, of course, is to finish first. And you're so right when it comes to points and rankings, because we know what it means, to be at a certain place in the FIFA rankings for Canadians to play overseas, how easier it becomes for them. And we saw a lot of moves already between Buchanan, Larea, and Eustachio. But I want to ask you this, Ollie, because this is a big one. Maybe this is jumping ahead a little bit too much too, right? But how certain are you that John Herdman will still be with Canada beyond the 2022 World Cup?
It's an interesting question, because I think naturally you're inclined to think home World Cup 2026, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Who wouldn't want to continue on what he's built so far with this team and these young players? And maybe that will be the case, right? Maybe he will want to continue on to 2026 and be part of the kind of legacy that World Cup could leave, playing on home soil. But then you just look at the gap between the two tournaments, right? And that's the question mark. Is John Herdman's ambitious, like any coach. I'm sure he wants to go to the highest level possible. I'm sure he would be interested in testing himself in club football at some point in the future. And the question will be, does he have the motivation and the appetite to go 4 years between tournaments without another round of qualifiers like these to keep him and the team stimulated? We don't know what that schedule will look like. Maybe there'll be things, there'll be Gold Cups, obviously Nations League. Maybe there'll be some interesting things for Canada to compete in between now and then. But if there is, interest in him, and I'm sure there is after what he's done with this Canadian team, if there is an opportunity to go into club football, could that be tempting for him rather than staying in international football where, actually getting the team together is so sporadic a few times every year, and not going to get any more busy now we don't actually have to qualify for the next World Cup.
Yeah, I have no idea what is in Herdman's head or what's in his ear.
No, not the ear.
Bring up the graphic.
No.
Roll it.
Roll it in. To Ollie's point, yeah, the games, the calendar, that could be an issue. A couple things come to mind that may lead him in one direction or another. I think that Herdman is going to be a smash hit at the FIFA World Cup. Like, just his persona, just the way he is in front of a camera, behind a mic, the way that he has this team playing very well, a Canadian team that can potentially, shock the world to a certain degree. At Qatar, that can boost the stock of a manager just incredibly. We have no idea how that's going to play out, but if a big offer for another big jobs comes about, would you blame him would you blame anyone? For turning down an offer like that. The second factor that I've in the back of my head, we're going through a turnaround in terms of the governance structure and like who's in charge of Canada soccer. How much do you reward John Herdman for what the Canadian men's national team has accomplished? Do you write up a new contract for him? He would certainly earn it, right? How far are you willing to go to retain that talent? And what does that leadership structure look like? And does Herdman's vision for where he wants to take the men's program align with Canada Soccer's? I don't think that any of us can answer that question right now because we simply don't know. But I think there'll be increased pressure to raise the professionalism across the board and make sure that what Herdman's asking for, he gets it to a certain degree. If you want to keep him, it's the Jerry Maguire quote, show him the money, but you got to show him the love and you got to show him the commitment as well. So plenty can happen. We'll see.
We know where Greg Berhalter stands on this before the Americans took on the Canadians. He said, of course, we want the Canadians, to make it to Qatar and qualify for the World Cup. We just don't want them to win today. Well, too bad, so sad. That was the game in Hamilton and the Canadians did in fact go on to win. But let me ask you this now, as I completely ask this question with pettiness in my voice. Would you say, Garrett, that Canada should actually root for the United States to make Qatar? Should they root for or against them making the World Cup?
Never. Like, look, I don't care if you're not going to root against them, but why would you want to root against the team that you compare yourself to more oftentimes than not? Absolutely not. I couldn't do it. So
you're saying don't root against them?
I don't operate that way.
You're saying don't root against them.
Don't root for them.
Oh, don't root for them.
If you root against them, that's your own prerogative. But I wouldn't subscribe to rooting for the United States to qualify. No, absolutely not. Like seeing the meltdown after the U.S. failed to qualify for the last World Cup, it was scenes. It was scenes for days, for weeks, for months. Who wouldn't want to welcome that back into our lives?
You are evil. Ollie.
There's two different things here, right? Like there's the Berhalter, I hope they win every game apart from the ones against us, which no thanks. I didn't like that. But
you did not.
No, I didn't. And I think if you're a Canadian fan, I don't think anyone is telling you to root for the US team in other games, right? But I think if you're maybe the Canadian men's program, you want a competitive American program, right? Like I don't think this region can really improve and really develop and reach its full potential if you don't have strong American and Mexican teams. It's the whole thing about a rising tide, right? Like,
but they are. They are. They probably have the best group of players right now in CONCACAF.
Well, sure, but if they don't qualify for a World Cup, then things,
hilarious.
That's hilarious for us, maybe. I don't think it's great for CONCACAF. So I think you want those two teams in particular at the World Cup, competitive at the World Cup. I think that's good for CONCACAF as a whole.
What about Italy?
What? No, why are you bringing Italy?
Are you rooting for or against Italy in World Cup qualifying?
Absolutely no reason to bring this up. Ollie, be careful. I know where you live. Just stop. We're going to end right there.
I'm rooting for Macedonia, North Macedonia,
you're not.
right?
You really are not. Actually
by implication, I'm against Italy.
We're going to get together and watch that game, and then we'll see if your hair isn't disheveled by the end of it by my hand or not. All right, gentlemen, I'm being told that I have to apologize by producer Kyle here, because apparently he didn't like my LeBron take. I'm sorry. Father Time's coming for him. Father Time is coming for him.
He's had like 2 50-point games in the last month or something, hasn't he?
Problem is he needs to know his role. He's not a general manager. Let someone else do that.
Yeah,
and a coach.
He's not a good team builder. I'll give you that.
Yes.
Well, so you know what? Whatever. I am not taking it back. How about that? Until you guys are all on the side of Italy, I am not taking that back. See that right there?
Well, just going to have to move on with my life.
Yeah, we're moving on. Happy St. Patty's Day. Thanks for tuning in. That's Ollie, Gareth, I'm Andy, onesoccer.ca.